The gas station attendant paid for an elderly woman's gas, who appeared humble and was fired by the manager a few hours later. He couldn't believe who knocked on his door. Alex worked at a gas station and was having a particularly busy day. The sun was blazing, and many customers were arriving to refuel their vehicles. He attended to everyone efficiently and with a smile, even when the heat became unbearable. Amidst the rush, he noticed an elderly woman in simple, worn clothes approaching, with a worried expression on her face. The heat of that day was relentless, making Alex work even harder to keep up the pace. He moved quickly between the cars, offering a smile and quick service to every customer who stopped. The lines didn't seem to shorten, and exhaustion was beginning to set in, but Alex didn't let his fatigue show. As he finished attending to another impatient driver, he noticed the elderly woman approaching. Her simple, worn clothes contrasted with the modern, shiny vehicles surrounding her. The expression on her face was one of concern, as if she was carrying an invisible burden that made her hesitate with every step. Alex looked around to see if any of his colleagues could cover for him for a moment, then decided he could take a brief break to see what the woman needed. He approached her, trying to maintain the same welcoming smile he used with all customers. "Good afternoon, ma'am. Can I help you with something?" Alex asked, trying to hide the weariness in his voice. The elderly woman looked at him with eyes reflecting a mix of relief and uncertainty. She opened her mouth to respond but hesitated, as if choosing her words. Finally, she took a deep breath and tried to speak, but the words seemed to escape her. Alex remained patient, waiting for her to find the courage to express what she was feeling. Around them, the noise of cars and people continued, but at that moment, it seemed like there was a bubble of silence between them. Alex observed the elderly woman closely, noticing the distress in her eyes. He knew something was deeply troubling her, which made him step closer. "My name is Mrs. Rose," she finally said, her voice low and hesitant. I filled up my car, but I ended up forgetting my wallet at home." Alex sensed the sincerity in her voice, and the genuine worry on her face touched him. He knew situations like this could happen to anyone and felt an immediate urge to help. "I understand, Mrs. Rose," he responded in a reassuring tone. "Don't worry, we'll figure this out." He opened his own wallet and, without hesitation, took out the money needed for the gas. With a calm and determined gesture, he handed over the money. "Mrs. Rose, you don't need to worry," he said with a gentle smile. "You can pay me back later. I trust your word." Mrs. Rose's eyes filled with tears of gratitude. She seemed relieved, but still somewhat unsettled by the unexpected kindness. "Thank you, young man," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "I promise I'll pay back every cent." Alex nodded, still smiling. "Don't worry about that now. The important thing is that you're okay." The elderly woman held Alex's hand for a moment, expressing her gratitude without needing words. He felt a human connection in that gesture, like a mutual understanding that transcended the momentary situation. Deeply moved by Alex's generosity, Mrs. Rose began to cry. The tears in her eyes reflected genuine relief and gratitude that she struggled to fully express. "You don't know how much this means to me," she said, her voice trembling. She rummaged through her worn-out bag once more and found a piece of paper. With trembling hands, she took out a pen and wrote down her name and address. She carefully folded the paper and handed it to Alex. "So you know where to find me," she said, offering the paper as a form of assurance. "I'm trustworthy. You can believe that." Alex took the paper with a smile, carefully placing it in his uniform pocket. "I believe you, Mrs. Rose," he said. Meanwhile, other gas station employees watched the scene from a distance, exchanging skeptical glances. They had seen many difficult situations and were used to dealing with problematic customers, so the idea of helping someone like this seemed unusual to them. "Alex, you're too kind," said one of his coworkers, Paolo, shaking his head. "You have to be careful. Not everyone is as honest as they seem." Alex shrugged, not losing his smile. "I prefer to believe in people until they prove otherwise," he replied calmly. "I think everyone deserves a chance." Another employee, Robert, couldn't resist adding with a sarcastic smile. "That old lady must be a first-class liar." There are always some scammers around here. Alex heard the offensive comments and felt a tightness in his chest. He knew that distrust and cynicism were common in that environment, but he couldn't accept them treating Mrs. Rose that way. Instead of joining the criticism, he approached her, who was still getting ready to leave, and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. Mrs. Rose looked at him with eyes still full of gratitude and a touch of sadness from the words she heard. Alex faced her firmly and with a voice full of determination, said, "You don't need to worry about what they're saying," loud enough for his co-workers to hear. "I believe in you." Their words mean nothing. The employees who had made the comments fell silent, their expressions ranging from surprise to slight embarrassment. Alex's attitude, full of conviction and kindness, made it clear that he wouldn't tolerate disrespect towards the elderly woman. Mrs. Rose, still with tears in her eyes, squeezed Alex's hand in a gesture of silent thanks. "Thank you once again, my son. Your kindness means a lot to me," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. Alex smiled, feeling a wave of human warmth that surpassed the heat of that day. "You're welcome, Mrs. Rose. I'm here to help." She nodded and held his hand for a moment longer before letting go and getting into the car. Mrs. Rose thanked him one last time, wiping away the tears still streaming down her face. She got into the car, waving to Alex before driving away. He waved back, feeling a quiet satisfaction for having done what he thought was right. As the engine roared and she began to drive away, Alex stood there, watching until the car disappeared from sight. As Mrs. Rose drove off, Alex returned to work, but with a sense of inner satisfaction. Helping that woman, even in something seemingly small, gave him a renewed sense of purpose. Alex knew that despite the rush, that gesture had made a difference in someone's day, and that, to him, was worth much more than any physical effort the job required. The other employees also returned to work. Some still cast suspicious glances, but no one else made sarcastic comments. Alex knew that his words and actions had left a strong impression, at least for a moment. He hoped that maybe this could make his colleagues reconsider their attitudes in the future. The sun continued to shine intensely, but Alex felt lighter, as if that act of kindness had illuminated his day in a special way. He returned to work, aware of the suspicious looks from his colleagues, but determined to maintain his belief in people's goodness, knowing that small gestures of generosity could make a big difference in the world. While attending to the next customers, Alex couldn't stop thinking about Mrs. Rose and the piece of paper in his pocket. He had faith she would return, but more than that, he believed that regardless of the outcome, it wasn't about the money. A few minutes after the elderly woman left, the hostility from Alex's co-workers returned. Murmured comments and glances followed him as he attended to the remaining customers. Alex tried to ignore them, staying focused on his work. When the day finally began to calm down and the customer flow decreased, Alex thought he might be able to relax a bit. However, his thoughts were interrupted when the station manager, Mr. Antony, called him to the office. The manager was serious, with an expression of concern that Alex rarely saw. "Alex, I need to talk to you," said Mr. Antony, indicating a chair on the other side of the desk. Alex sat down, feeling a knot forming in his stomach. He knew something was wrong. "I heard about what happened today," the manager began, choosing his words carefully. "One of the employees informed me that they saw you taking money from the cash register to pay for a customer's gas." Alex felt a shock of indignation mixed with sadness. He immediately shook his head, denying the accusation. "No, sir. I didn't do that," he replied firmly. "I used my own money to help that woman. She was in a tough situation and seemed genuinely worried. I couldn't leave her without help." Mr. Antony observed Alex closely, evaluating his sincerity. "You're saying you took money out of your own pocket to pay for her gas?" "Yes," Alex affirmed, with his eyes reflecting the seriousness of his words. "I believe in her word and was willing to risk my own money to help. I felt it was the right thing to do." The manager was silent for a moment, thoughtful. He had known Alex for some time and knew he was an honest and dedicated employee. Still, he needed to consider all the information before making a decision. "Alex, your attitude was very noble," he finally said, softening his expression a bit. "But you need to understand that any movement of money, whether from the register or personal, can be misinterpreted. Alex nodded, understanding the manager's concern. Yes, sir, I understand. It was an impulse to help someone in need. I didn't think about the possible consequences. The manager listened carefully to Alex's words, recognizing the sincerity in his voice. However, the expression on Mr. Anthony's face remained serious and unwavering. He sighed deeply before speaking. I'm sorry, Alex, but it's too late, said Mr. Anthony, his voice firm but lacking the harshness that usually accompanied a dismissal. If we make an exception, others might think they can delay payment, and that could create problems. I understand your good intentions, but we need to follow the rules. Alex's heart sank. He knew he had acted with his heart, but he didn't expect it to result in such a drastic measure. The lack of empathy and understanding in the manager's tone was evident. Despite all his effort and dedication to the job, he was being punished for trying to do good. Mr. Anthony, please understand, Alex tried to argue, but the manager raised his hand to interrupt him. I understand, Alex, but I can't let this go, the manager continued. The decision has already been made. Unfortunately, I'll need you to hand over your badge and keys. Alex's heart sank even further. He knew his actions could be misinterpreted, but he never imagined they would result in his dismissal. With a sigh, he took the badge out of his pocket and placed it on the manager's desk, along with the station keys. I hope you find a place where your good intentions are recognized and valued, said Mr. Anthony, his voice softening a bit. But here we need to follow the rules strictly. Alex stood up, feeling a huge weight on his shoulders. He thanked the manager with a nod and left the office. Now, the gas station felt different, much colder and more impersonal. His colleagues cast curious glances, and some even seemed pleased with what had happened. He walked slowly to his locker, grabbed his few belongings, and walked out the front door. The sun was still shining brightly, but the day's heat seemed to have diminished, reflecting his state of mind. Alex left the station with tears in his eyes and a heavy heart from losing his job. He knew he had done what he considered right by helping Mrs. Rose, and despite being fired, he didn't regret his decision. His attitude aligned with his principles, and that gave him a sense of integrity, even if it wasn't recognized by the company. As he walked home, Alex reflected on what had happened. He knew he had acted with his heart, but he also understood the need for rules and regulations. Still, the manager's lack of compassion left him bitter. Even with all the sadness, Alex decided he wouldn't let that episode change who he was. He would continue to believe in kindness and help others whenever he could. After all, Alex preferred a world where acts of generosity were the norm, not the exception. And with that thought, Alex moved forward, determined to find a place where his actions would be valued and where he could continue to make a difference in people's lives, even in small but significant ways. When he arrived home, Alex found Aurora in the living room, immersed in her daily activities. Her presence, always a refuge of affection and understanding, felt like a relief amid the whirlwind of emotions he was feeling. The image of his mother, calm and comfortable at home, contrasted sharply with the inner turmoil he was carrying. Alex knew she would sense his sadness and that he would need to be strong to face the moment, but the prospect of sharing his pain with someone who genuinely cared for him helped him breathe a little easier. He approached the living room, where the familiar environment offered some comfort amid his disillusionment. The tranquil scene of the house, with the aroma of fresh coffee and the soft sound of the radio in the background, provided a calming contrast to the agitation of his day. As Alex entered the living room, the weight of tears and sadness was still present, but the simple fact of being at home, near his mother, brought a sense of relief and temporary lightness. He knew that despite the difficulties, his mother's love and support would be a firm anchor to face the challenges ahead. Aurora, noticing Alex's downcast expression, tried to break the silence with a gentle question. How was your day, Alex? Alex hesitated for a moment to find the right words. The weight of emotions and the sense of failure still haunted him. He knew he needed to share the truth with his mother, but the thought of revealing his loss made him feel even more vulnerable. Finally, Alex gathered his courage and looked at Aurora with a mix of sadness and determination. Mom, I lost my job today. Aurora was visibly surprised and concerned. The shock was evident on her face, and the wrinkles on her forehead deepened as she tried to understand what was happening. With a visible effort, Aurora rose from the couch, her legs heavy and sore, and approached Alex with a genuine expression of concern. "What happened, my dear?" she asked, her voice full of tenderness and anxiety. Alex felt a lump in his throat, seeing the worry in his mother's eyes. He prepared to explain the details, feeling comforted by the support she always offered him. Aurora's presence, even with her difficulty moving, seemed an unshakable source of love and understanding. As Alex began to recount what had happened, the feeling of being at home, near someone who truly cared, filled his heart. He began to explain the situation to Aurora, detailing every moment of the day. Alex described the encounter with Mrs. Rose, the difficulty the elderly woman had in trying to pay for the gas, and how, despite the hostility from his colleagues, he decided to help her. With a choked voice, Alex recounted the conversation with the manager and how, in the end, it resulted in his dismissal. Aurora listened attentively, and her silence demonstrated the concern she always had for her son. The connection between them, strong and warm, was a symbol that despite the adversities, her mother's support and love would be a solid foundation to help him face the challenges ahead. While Alex spoke, Betty, his 10-year-old sister, entered the room. She had noticed the sadness in her brother's voice and felt the need to approach, with a look of concern and understanding beyond her years. Betty walked up to Alex and hugged him tightly. "Brother," said Betty with a sweet and firm voice, "you did the right thing. What matters is that you helped someone who needed it. We'll figure this out, I'm sure." Betty's gesture and words offered Alex unexpected comfort. The wisdom and empathy of his sister, so young, brought a welcome relief. He hugged her back, feeling the strength and warmth of her sibling support. Aurora watched the moment with a sad smile. Betty's maturity in dealing with the situation was a reflection of the loving and supportive environment she and Alex had created at home. Betty's hug and encouraging words helped dissipate some of the shadow hanging over Alex, giving him a new perspective and a renewed sense of hope. As Alex pulled away from the hug, he looked at his sister and his mother, feeling a wave of gratitude and relief. With the support and understanding of his family, he felt a little stronger to face what lay ahead. The certainty that they would stand by his side helped him believe that despite the difficulties, there was a path to be walked and that together they could find a solution. Even with the visible concern on her face, Aurora tried to stay calm as she dealt with the situation. Although the family's finances were a constant concern, her support for Alex was unwavering. She knew that despite the financial hardship, her son's integrity and kindness were values she had cultivated with pride. Aurora looked at Alex with a look of understanding and encouragement, recognizing the courage and generosity he had shown. "You've always had a generous heart, Alex," she said in a voice that, although soft, carried a deep sense of pride. "I believe that in the end, everything will work out. The kindness you showed today is something rare and valuable." Alex felt a wave of gratitude as he heard his mother's words. Despite the disappointment of losing his job and the financial pressure his family was facing, he felt strengthened by Aurora's unconditional support and Betty's understanding. He knew that if there was any reason to feel proud, it was the fact that his actions had been guided by deep compassion. Even in the face of the news of his dismissal, Alex did not regret his choice. He had acted based on his principles, helping someone in need without expecting anything in return. For him, the importance of doing good to those in need, regardless of personal consequences, was a value that outweighed any obstacle or difficulty. Aurora, observing her son's determination and dignity, felt they would come out of this situation stronger. She believed that in the end, the good Alex had done would return to him in some way, and that his actions, although not recognized by the company, demonstrated the kind of character that truly mattered. Despite the atmosphere of tension and uncertainty, the house became a place of support and hope. Aurora and Betty stood by Alex's side, offering the comfort and strength needed to face the days ahead. Together, as a united family, they were ready to face the adversities and find a way to move forward, keeping the faith that, at some point, things would change for the better. While Aurora and Betty were sitting together in the living room, discussing how they could face the situation. The phone rang, breaking the tense silence that hovered in the air. The sound of the ringing was like a reminder of real life, which seemed distant at that moment. Alex, still deep in thoughts about the future, got up to answer the call. He picked up the phone, noticing an unknown number on the screen, with a tone of curiosity mixed with slight expectation. He answered. "Hello," Alex said, trying to hide the anxiety in his voice. On the other end of the line, a calm and friendly voice responded. "Hello, my name is Brian. I'm the grandson of Mrs. Rose, the lady you helped at the gas station today." Alex was surprised to hear Mrs. Rose's name and immediately became more attentive. "Ah, yes, of course. Hello, Brian. How can I help you?" Brian continued with a warm tone, visibly grateful. "I want to thank you for helping my grandmother. She told me about what happened, and I'm very touched by your generosity. She told me how kind you were." Alex, feeling a mix of relief and curiosity, responded, "It was my pleasure to help. She seemed to need help, and I just did what I thought was right." With a warm and sincere tone, Brian explained, "My grandmother was deeply moved by your generosity and help. She detailed the whole story when she got home, and I wanted to contact you right away. I found out that you were fired from your job, and I'm sorry to hear that." Alex, touched by Brian's concern and empathy, responded firmly, "Don't worry, Brian. I don't regret what I did. Helping your grandmother was the right thing to do." Brian paused before continuing. "I understand, and that's why I'm calling. I have a proposal for you. I'd like to reimburse the amount for the gas, of course, but I'd also like to discuss something else with you. Can we arrange a meeting to talk about it?" Surprised by the offer and the kindness of the proposal, Alex hesitated for a moment. He looked at Aurora and Betty, who were watching with curiosity and hope. "Sure, Brian. I'm available to talk." Brian continued, demonstrating genuine gratitude. "My grandmother is truly grateful for what you did, and we want to keep our word." Alex felt warmth in his heart hearing Brian's words. The sincerity in his voice and the intention to compensate for the gas were gestures of respect and recognition that he greatly appreciated. "I'm touched by your attitude, Brian. It would be a pleasure to meet you. You can come by any time that's convenient." Brian thanked Alex and confirmed the details of the visit. "Thank you for being so understanding, Alex. I'll be there as soon as possible. See you." Alex, still holding the phone, felt a slight smile form on his face. The unexpected call brought a new wave of hope and curiosity about what might come next. After ending the call, Alex turned to Aurora and Betty, both attentive and hopeful. He shared the news about the call with renewed enthusiasm. Aurora and Betty listened attentively, their expressions brightening with the prospect that perhaps a solution was on the horizon. The hope that Alex's generosity might be recognized and rewarded was beginning to materialize, offering a new perspective on the future that was yet to come. Aurora embraced Alex with an affectionate gesture, and the atmosphere in the room filled with a new positive energy. Brian's visit and the promise of payment brought a sense that despite the adversities faced, Alex's kindness and integrity were being recognized and valued. Thus, the family prepared to welcome Brian, eager to see what the future held and grateful for the support that continued to arrive in unexpected moments. Before long, Brian arrived at Alex's house, bringing with him the amount for the gas Mrs. Rose had used and a card with a message of thanks. Brian handed the payment to Alex with a genuine smile, and Alex, visibly touched by the kindness, accepted the amount with gratitude. Beyond the payment, Alex made an additional gesture of hospitality by inviting Brian for coffee. As he entered the house, he was warmly received by Aurora, who led him to the living room. While the two sat in the living room, Aurora prepared the coffee and offered some simple treats. The conversation began in a relaxed manner, with Brian praising Alex's attitude and expressing his admiration for his kindness. Alex, in turn, asked questions about Brian's family and Mrs. Rose, showing genuine interest in the story and experiences of his visitor. As they talked, Brian realized how genuinely friendly and generous Alex was. The atmosphere of the living room, with its welcoming colors and the aroma of fresh coffee, seemed to reflect Alex's warm nature and that of his family. Brian saw that beyond his generous action, Alex was a person with a big heart and a friendly spirit. The coffee turned into an engaging conversation, with both sharing stories and experiences. Brian felt a connection with Alex and appreciated the opportunity to get to know the person behind the good deed better. The meeting, which had started with a simple payment, became a moment of building a true friendship. As the coffee continued, Brian observed Alex with a look of admiration. It seemed the best moment to share something important that he had kept a secret. After a moment of hesitation, Brian decided to reveal the truth. "My grandmother has been facing some memory problems and was recently diagnosed with Alzheimer's," Brian said, with a voice carrying a tone of sincerity and respect. He saw the surprise on Alex's face. Alex was stunned by the revelation, an expression of shock evident in his eyes. He listened as Brian explained in more detail. "She's a wonderful person, but the disease has greatly affected her ability to remember things. I understand that she may have caused some confusion at the gas station, but even so, she remembered you and was deeply moved by your help." Showing a mix of empathy and sadness, Brian continued, "I just wanted you to know that despite the issues my grandmother is facing, your generosity and patience meant a lot to us, and I feel it's important for you to know that your act of kindness was not only recognized but truly appreciated." Although surprised by the revelation, Alex felt relieved to understand the context behind the situation. The news about Mrs. Rose's condition helped explain the difficulties she had faced. He felt even more touched by the situation and understood the depth of the impact of his actions. "I'm truly sorry to hear about your grandmother's condition," Alex said, with a tone of empathy and understanding. "I just did what I thought was right at the time. If you need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out to me." Brian, while speaking with Alex, explained with a tone of concern and sincerity, "We're trying to adapt to the new issues related to my grandmother's health. We can't leave her alone at home anymore, and it's been a challenge for all of us. Just today, she left driving the car without anyone noticing." He paused, looking into Alex's eyes with an expression of gratitude. "The gesture you made was extremely moving in such difficult and vulnerable times for our family. Your kindness showed that there are still good-hearted people in the world. Even without knowing our circumstances, you did what was right." Alex, listening attentively, felt a wave of compassion for Brian's family. Understanding the difficulties they were facing brought a new perspective to the situation. He was grateful to have had the opportunity to help, even without knowing the full story at the time. "I'm almost embarrassed, Brian." Deep down, it was a simple and heartfelt gesture, he said. The atmosphere was filled with a sense of connection and mutual understanding until Brian finally announced the true reason for his visit, with a resolute tone and a look of respect. "Actually, I'm the owner of the gas station where everything happened, Alex. That's why I want to make you an offer as a way of thanking you for everything you did. I'd like to offer you a job as a manager of my gas station. I'm sorry you were unfairly dismissed, and Mr. Anthony has already been relieved of his duties." The offer completely caught Alex by surprise. He looked at Brian, astonished and emotional, absorbing the meaning of his words. The idea of a promotion instead of being fired, especially in such a challenging moment, was a significant gesture that not only recognized Alex's kindness, but also offered a new opportunity for his future. With tears of gratitude in his eyes, Alex sincerely thanked Brian. He was touched by the offer and the way Brian had recognized and valued his action. "I don't know how to thank you enough, Brian. This means a lot to me. I accept the offer with great gratitude and hope to contribute to your company in the best way possible." Brian smiled, relieved and pleased to help Alex for his kindness. The meeting, which started with a simple conversation about an act of generosity, had turned into a new opportunity for Alex, showing that sometimes, even in the most challenging situations, moments of hope and new possibilities arise. Alex, surprised and deeply moved, listened attentively as Brian continued to speak with an encouraging and firm tone. "I have full confidence in you," Brian said, looking into Alex's eyes with sincerity. "I saw your compassion and dedication during what happened at the station. I believe you'd be perfect for the position." He paused, allowing his words to be absorbed. "Tomorrow morning, you'll receive brief training, and your start as a manager will be immediate. I'm confident that with your work ethic, compassion, and leadership skills, You'll be a valuable addition to our team." Alex felt a wave of emotion hearing these words. Brian's offer was also a reaffirmation that his character and actions had not gone unnoticed. The possibility of starting a new chapter in his life, with a position of responsibility and the chance to contribute significantly. With his voice choked with emotion, Alex replied, "Brian, your words mean so much to me. Not just for the offer, but for how you recognize the value of what I did. I'm truly grateful for this opportunity and ready to give my best." Brian smiled, visibly satisfied with Alex's response. "I'm looking forward to working with you, Alex. I believe you'll bring a new perspective and great value to our team. Let's start planning the training and next steps." Alex, feeling a mix of relief and excitement, thanked him once again. Brian's visit had transformed a difficult situation into an opportunity for growth and renewal. With a new job in sight and the recognition of his effort and kindness, Alex felt invigorated and prepared to face the challenges ahead. The chance to start anew and be part of something bigger brought a new light to his future, reaffirming his belief that even in times of adversity, kindness and integrity can open unexpected doors and provide new opportunities. With tears of gratitude in his eyes, Alex thanked Brian once again for the offer. The gesture of kindness that started at the gas station had turned into an extraordinary opportunity for Alex and his family. What seemed like a simple act of generosity was now creating a new and promising path in his life. The next morning, Alex received training and started his new role with renewed determination, bringing to the position his leadership skills, work ethic, and above all, the same compassion that had guided him in helping Mrs. Rose. In the first months of work, Alex quickly stood out. His dedication and management skills were evident, and he was recognized for his ability to lead the team with empathy and effectiveness. His contribution helped improve the station's operation, increasing customer satisfaction and strengthening the team. Alex's hard work and commitment didn't go unnoticed, and he was praised by both colleagues and supervisors. Even Paolo and Robert, who had mocked his kindness to Mrs. Rose, completely changed their attitudes, fearing they might lose their jobs. Moreover, the impact of the new position was profound for Alex and his family, truly changing their lives. The financial stability the new job brought relieved the economic concerns that had been a constant source of stress, and Aurora and Betty felt a wave of relief and happiness seeing the positive transformation in Alex's life. With the new job, Alex was finally able to provide a better life for his mother and sister. The financial stability he now had allowed him to cover all household expenses, offering more comfort to his family and improving everyone's quality of life. He felt a deep sense of fulfillment and pride for having followed his heart and done what he considered right, even when it had put his own job at risk. Now established in his new role as manager, Alex continued to be an example of integrity and compassion. His journey not only brought positive changes to his own life, but also inspired others around him to recognize the value of helping others and believing in human kindness. Brian's gesture not only rewarded Alex's generosity, but also reaffirmed his faith in humanity. Brian's kindness and the unexpected offer of a new job showed Alex that despite the difficulties and injustices he had faced, the universe still had ways of returning the good he had sown. This recognition was proof that his actions had meaning and impact, and it brought immense comfort to Alex. Over time, he continued to excel with his dedication and compassion in managing the station. He led his team with empathy, always striving to create a positive and welcoming environment. Customers at the station noticed the difference, frequently praising the attentive service and efficiency. Alex's experience demonstrated that acts of kindness, even the simplest ones, can create unexpected connections and transform lives for the better. What started as helping an elderly woman in need resulted in a lasting relationship and a new life opportunity. The story of Alex and Brian spread, inspiring others to act with generosity and showing that in the midst of adversity, kindness can open doors and create meaningful opportunities. Alex's life had been transformed, and he continued to touch lives with his story. His example showed that even amid adversity, Integrity and a generous heart can create opportunities and build a legacy of hope and inspiration. The cycle of kindness that began with a simple gesture at the gas station had expanded, proving that, in the end, the good we do for others can truly come back to us in surprising and enriching ways. So, did you like the story? We appreciate your company. Don't forget to give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and comment below what you thought of the story.